It's recap time. I bring you one more recap. Today I'll be explaining a movie called Out of Furnace from the year 2013. The film starts with a bunch of people watching a movie inside a car park. The scene gets interesting fast when Harlan, a middle-aged man, and a lady beside him are introduced. It doesn't take us long to figure out that this Harlan guy is a good-for-nothing violent man who starts to trouble his lady after she laughs at him. A random stranger comes around and tries to offer his help by confronting Harlan. However, it doesn't end well for him, as Harlan is used to beating up guys and easily overpowers the stranger in a one-to-one brawl. The next scene introduces another guy named Russell. We find him as an ordinary person who works in a steel factory for a living. When Russell arrives back from his work, he takes notice of a car that belongs to his brother Rodney. When Russell meets with Rodney, he also learns that he has lost his money on betting. This makes him a little angry as he inquires about the source of money from his brother. This is when Rodney reveals that he took money for betting from John Petty, a high-profile goon who is not going to be happy after learning that Rodney lost his money. Russell takes Rodney home, and we find their aging father living his last few moments. Later that day, Russell reaches out to John Petty himself and pays half the amount back to him that his brother owed. John Petty praises him but also warns Russell about his brother's reckless consequences. He advises him to leave his brother on his own and focus on other things, like his own life. When Russell leaves the place under the influence of alcohol, he gets into a car accident. This leaves the driver in the other car dead. The strange sequence of events leads Russell to jail, where he faces unintentional murder charges. Rodney visits Russell in jail and informs him about their father's death, as he couldn't bear the news of his son getting arrested. He also states that his girlfriend, Lena, has also left him, and he is there for him during the tough times. After a while, Russell finally gets out of jail, and happy Rodney comes to visit him. This is when he starts to monitor his ex-girlfriend, who left him during his worst time. He also notices that she has started to date someone else and moves on in her life. Russell finds it really hard to move ahead in life, as he is still stuck with the memories of his ex-girlfriend, Lena. Even though he was in prison for a long time, he remains in the same loop of despair and grief. The film shifts to another scene where Rodney is involved in a fight outside a factory. It is revealed that Rodney is supposed to lose the fight as John Petty had placed his money and already fixed it. However, when the opponent starts to abuse him, Rodney loses his cool and wins the fight by overpowering him. This is when John Petty confronts Rodney and warns him of the consequences. John Petty also states that he will eliminate Rodney if he doesn't return what he owes. The altercation leaves Rodney in a mix of emotions, as he is unsure about how his life will move ahead after this. In the heat of the moment, he made a mistake and ruined his chances of getting even with John. After a while, beaten-up Rodney returns home and gets an earful from his caring brother. He states that he needs to figure out his life and maybe work with him in the steel factory. This makes for an emotional moment in the film as the brothers decide to figure out their life together. However, Rodney remains unmoved. Rodney refuses Russell's suggestions, as he believes that he is made for something bigger and greater. This doesn't create a rift between the two brothers, but leaves Russell even more worried about the consequences of his brother's actions. He firmly believes that Rodney is not on the right path. Right after this, Rodney pays another visit to John Petty and confides him with a new idea. Rodney presents a situation where they both can double their profits if they meet up with Harlan, the bad guy at the start of the movie. Rodney reveals that he can set up some big fights illegally, and this will work well in their favor. Even though John Petty is unsure about the idea, he gives in to Rodney's suggestions. He also states that Harlan is a dangerous person, and this whole thing could completely backfire. Meanwhile, a heartbroken Russell visits his ex-girlfriend Lena and tries to fix things. This is when he learns that she is already pregnant and has no intentions to get back. Initially, he was of the opinion that once he confided in Lena, she would listen to him and come back together. However, after this startling revelation, Russell is left completely heartbroken. He realizes that no matter what he does, he will never be whole again. Russell makes peace with the fact and wishes her the best while leaving. The scene shifts to Rodney and John meeting Harlan together for the first time. During this, things get tensed up as the unpredictable Harlan gets irritated with Rodney's behavior. Harlan even tries to get into a fight with Rodney and show him who's the boss around here. An angry Rodney is also nearly ready for the one-on-one fight. However, John is able to defuse the environment and also set up a deal for Rodney. The deal remains the same. Rodney is to lose a fight to make a win-win situation for both Harlan and John. As usual, the fight starts, and both Rodney and the opponent start to land punches at each other. Initially, John fears that Rodney will win the fight and end up hurting his interest. Rodney goes head-to-head with the opponent and doesn't act like he is going to lose. This leaves everyone worried, as it wasn't part of the plan. However, Rodney sticks to the script and loses the fight after getting knocked out. This leads to a wave of happiness inside John, who believes that his relationship with Harlan is over. The duo meets Harlan for the final time and leaves the scene. They also get in their car and start to return home. This is when Harlan and his goons arrive and obstruct their path. An unpredictable Harlan states that Rodney needs to fight more for him and that their due is not over. This leaves John in a state of confusion, as he wasn't aware of this part of the deal. He tries to talk with Harlan, but the bad guy ends up eliminating him. To everyone's surprise, a phone drops inside John's car and a voicemail starts to get recorded. This becomes proof of Harlan's crime, as he remains totally unaware of it. The men behind Harlan also take Rodney with them as they leave the scene. Meanwhile, a totally broken Russell contemplates the next chapter of his life. This is when he discovers Rodney's letter, which he keeps hidden from him. The letter reveals that Rodney had planned to join his brother as part of his new life after participating in the final fight for John Petty. All of a sudden, Officer Wesley knocks at Russell's door and reveals that John Petty is eliminated. Later in the station, Officer Wesley reveals the details about the whole thing. He also states Rodney was last seen with John, along with the criminal Harlan. This leads to another round of questions which infuriates Russell. The rightful brother believes that the cops aren't pressing hard on Harlan, as he could be the main perpetrator behind all this. After leaving the station, Russell runs into Dan, the bartender, who received John's voicemail. He states that John owed big time to Harlan and that he was already fearful about it. Russell decides to take the matter into his own hands and dig up some details. He meets up with a small-time thug who works for Harlan and tries to buy some drugs from him. However, the thug gets suspicious of him and warns him to run away. Later that night, a local cop tries to advise Russell to stay away from Harlan, as he is a dangerous person who could do him a lot of harm. Russell listens to it and goes back to his normal life. After a while, Officer Wesley pays another visit to Russell and informs him about his brother's demise. He reveals that Rodney's body was found inside the ground. This leaves Russell in a state of complete shock. Later, Officer Wesley pays another visit to Russell's house along with Lena. He tries to make sure that Russell doesn't end up doing something stupid, and therefore Lena consoles him. She also informs him that it will be a bad idea to go after Harlan. Russell listens to everyone and returns back to his normal routine. Now he is more alone than ever. Nearly a month later, Russell realizes that Harlan hasn't been caught, and no progress has been made in the case. This breaks Russell's trust in the authorities, and he decides to take the matter into his own hands. He reaches directly at John's bar and finds Harlan's number from the office. He calls Harlan and states that he is taking over John's business and that he wants to settle the dues. Harlan acts confused about the whole situation but goes with it. The plan works, and Harlan arrives at John's office with a revengeful Russell already on the verge of completing his plan. Initially, Russell punctures the tires of Harlan's van and decides to go inside the bar. However, Harlan already remains prepared for what's coming. The dangerous guy starts to fire using his own weapon while Russell uses his rifle. They both engage in a shootout, which leaves both of their respective guys dead. Harlan is able to escape the scene but realizes that his van is already punctured. He makes a run for it and gets followed by Russell from behind. At last, Russell closes into Harlan, who falls to the ground. This is when he shoots him in the leg and waits for his response. Harlan decides to run for it again and tries to escape. However, Russell again gets the better of him and shoots at his second leg. This is when Harlan finally falls down. Finally, Harlan tries to know the reason why Russell is after him. He states that he is the brother of Rodney, which is why he is seeking his revenge. An already injured Harlan tries to escape for the final time before Russell puts an aim on him. Meanwhile, Officer Wesley arrives at the scene and tries to stop Russell from eliminating Harlan. However, Russell pays no attention to his words and takes the final shot that eliminates Harlan finally. In the last scene, we find Russell sitting inside his home, thereby indicating that Officer Wesley did not reach out to higher authorities about the elimination of Harlan, therefore enabling Russell to live a life of peace after his revenge is complete. The film ends here. I hope you liked this movie recap. Please comment on what you liked about this movie and what scene you liked, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.